All right. So look, okay, so we're back, part two. How's everybody doing? This is Michael Imhotep, host of the African History Network show. So we were discussing Black farmers claiming they were deliberately sold fake seeds. Black farmers claim they were sold fake seeds to steal their land. All right, this is part two. Zoom froze up on me. So this is part two of it. How's everybody doing? Okay, so so this all deals with history, all right? And this also deals with policy, deals with law. All this is interconnected, all right? So check out the article from thenation.com, thenation.com, entitled African Americans Have Lost Untold Acres of Land Over the Last Century. African Americans have lost untold acres of land over the last century. And we see Dr. King was addressing this also with the Poor People's Campaign in 1967 and 1968. A lot of people don't know this, all right? So when we deal with issues pertaining to the African American community, we deal with different agendas and issues we're pushing during political cycles and election cycles. The loss of millions of acres of land that was owned by African Americans. This has to be addressed. Okay, jobs are not going to fix this. Okay, jobs are not going to fix the theft of land and the loss of land. That's not going to address that. All right, and this is why largely the African American farmers sued the federal government. We know it was under President Obama that their lawsuit was paid out. Okay. All right, so this is a very, very important piece of history, and we see how this shows up today. And we look at the articles from rawstory.com and AtlantaBlackStar.com. Black farmers were deliberately sold fake seeds and schemed to steal their land. Report from rawstory.com. Okay, and this once again, when you look at when you study history, you see that land was always at the center of a lot of these fights, even going back to when you have when we have the colonies, the British colonies, Jamestown, Virginia, things like this. You have the British colonies. You're going to have the head rights acts. You have the head rights, and you have hundreds of thousands, millions of acres of land given away to white people who were coming to this land, and they were given additional land for each slave that they owned, each enslaved African. Okay, and this is land being taken away from Native Americans. This is before the American Revolutionary War. Okay, Dr. Claude Anderson talks about this, and he talks about it also in his latest book, The Black History Reader: 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. All right, so all this, historical events don't happen in a vacuum. They are the result of a sequence of historical events that take place. That you have historical events that have a domino effect, right? And then you have a larger event that takes place. But you have to understand the history of that problem to be able to properly address the problem and correct it. Okay, so jobs are not going to, even though employment is important, jobs are important, jobs are not going to correct this. All right, especially African Americans working for white people. That's not that's not going to correct this issue. Okay, all right. So if you like this type of information, be sure to register for the online courses that I teach. We just posted the link here. It's also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. But it includes ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And that's a 14-hour, 7-session online course that I teach. It's all on demand. This bundle pack includes 10 courses. That's one of them in the bundle pack. And you can watch on your smartphone, your tablet, or your computer. Watch from around the world. It's on sale $60, regularly $130. Also includes Great African Women in History, The Mothers of Civilization, African American Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump, Voter Suppression, Reparations, and How Elections Have Consequences. Also includes an online class I did dealing with the film Black Panther, March 31st, 2018, and some other classes also, okay? So if you need me to post the link again, let me know. It's also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, right on the homepage, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, all right? We'll repost the link. You can register for that tonight. As soon as you register, you can start watching, okay? As soon as you register, you can start watching the online courses. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have video clips. It's a lot of information covered. We'll post it again here, okay? And then look at the article from HuffingtonPost.com. Lynchings didn't disappear, it just evolved. Lynchings didn't disappear, it just evolved. And this dealt with the racial terrorism that many African Americans were dealing with. And many of us were ran off of our land also. Ran off of our land out of the South. This land confiscated by Europeans. And see, when you read something like this, How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy, they deal with this history, and they deal with how, because of the theft of 2.3 billion acres of land from African Americans, from Indigenous Africans, from Native Americans, you have a maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans. So you then can't say, well, because of the Civil Rights Act of '64 and the Voting Rights Act of '65, you now have equality. Everything's equal now. No, it's not equal. What are you talking about? You compete with your wealth and resources. No, it's not equal. Okay, I mean, what are you talking about? Yeah, the Civil Rights Movement was necessary. Yeah, the Civil Rights Act of '64 was necessary because we were saying we want all of our rights now. We want all of our rights today. We fought in all the wars. We want all of our rights today. But equal rights and equality are not the same thing. You don't have equality until you have wealth parity and you have ownership of land. Equal rights and equality are not the same thing. Yes, equal rights are important. So we have to understand also the Civil Rights Movement was evolving, and it evolves into human rights. 66, 68, see, Dr. King is focusing on human rights. All right. Yeah, so yeah, you got to read this book, How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. And at the finalcall.com, they had a four-part series of articles called Hard Work or Hardly Working, How White Folks Got So Rich. And these articles were summaries of this book. Okay, that's at finalcall.com. I'll pull up that article, post the link here. All right, so African American business owners, post your name of your businesses here on the thread of the broadcast. And at the African History Network, we have low-cost opportunities for you to advertise, reach thousands of potential people, thousands of potential customers. And email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a special promotion. It's going to run one more day. We have 6 advertising slots left, okay? We put your 60-second commercial into the audio podcast of our radio shows, the African History Network show. And 6 slots left for advertisers, okay? So we reach thousands of people weekly. We're on Blog Talk Radio, our Blog Talk Radio page, blogtalkradio.com/the African History Network show. Our podcasts are uploaded to iTunes, our iTunes page, the African History Network show on iTunes, and it's also on Castbox, okay? They're also on some other platforms as well. Okay, so there was a 4-part series from finalcall.com back in 2011. I did radio shows dealing with these articles back then, but this is the first one. This is the first installment, Hard Work or Hardly Work, and How White Folks Got So Rich. This deals with history. The foundation, it says the foundation of American white supremacy since tenuously on a rickety base of lies and deceptions about how whites gained their wealth and status. A century and a half after slavery, the median wealth of white families is $100,000, and for black families, $5,000. Now it's gone up for African American families since then. It's at about 11,000 now. This is back in 2011. The belief that whites achieved this 20-to-1 wealth advantage by hard work is an absurd and a historical fantasy. You have to understand the real history. Now, I'm not saying that you did not have white people who worked hard, who were farmers, or people who worked hard, people who went to college, people who became doctors and lawyers. I'm not saying that you did not have some white people who worked hard. But if hard work was the common denominator for success in this country, then African Americans will be the most successful people in the history of this country, because who worked harder than the slave for 246 years? Who worked harder than the sharecropper? Who worked harder than somebody who was sentenced to the convict leasing system because of the black codes that was set up in 1865 and 1866? Okay, so if hard work was the common denominator, if hard work was the secret to success in this country, then no one would be more successful than African Americans. Hard work is not the secret to success. Okay, you're dealing with the maldistribution of wealth, power, and resources through laws and policies and ordinances and statutes and things like this. You're dealing with the theft of land. So even though you had some white people who did work hard and they studied and went to college and things like this, well, you got to talk about a history of segregation where a lot of African Americans couldn't go to those institutions, couldn't go to those state funded and state ran institutions. Okay, so you have to deal with a theft of land. You have to deal with how we were not compensated with land after slavery ended, but you give land to white peasants coming to this country because of the Homestead Act of 1862. Then you had a Southern Homestead Act of 1866 that gave 45 million acres of land the year after slavery ends. This almost exclusively goes to white people. It's in five states. Okay, so this don't have nothing to do with hard work. All right, so I'm all for hard work and things like this, but wait a second, that's not the history of this country. Okay, if you go through, because I'm taking this with me. See, this is one of the books I travel with. There are like 4 books I travel with. This is one of them. Another book I travel with is a book that has historical documents in it, like the U.S. Constitution and Declaration of Independence. But this is one of the books I travel with. So this is the 3rd edition, How White Folks Got So Rich, The Untold Story of American White Supremacy. And one of the things they talk about here, page 27, one cannot overstate the value of cotton to white world propriety, and correspondingly cotton's direct connection to the destruction of Black civilization. Okay, now this is one of the books we also use in our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. Okay, and I'll post that link again. You can register at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. They're all on demand. It's a bundle pack of 10 classes. They're all on demand. And this is this one right here, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach in school, is a 14-hour, 7-session online course. There's bonus content also. One cannot overstate the value of cotton to white world prosperity, and correspondingly, cotton's direct connection to the destruction of Black civilization. Now, that's a reference to Dr. Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization, where he deals with history from 4500 BC up until the 1970s. By 1840, now this is 11 years before the Civil War starts. By 1840, cotton exports were greater than all other exports combined, and America's 75,000 cotton plantations generated 3/4 of the world's cotton supply. Now, the 75,000 cotton plantations that the U.S. had generated 3/4 of the world's cotton supply. Cotton was king, okay? At least 6 of every 10 Africans worked directly in cotton production. The others were largely engaged in growing food and building housing for use by the cotton cultivating slaves. Constructing roads, bridges, and ports for cotton shipping and transport, and tending the homes and families of cotton masters, cotton traders, and cotton businessmen. Moreover, enslaved Africans represented 2/3 of plantation families' total wealth. Okay, enslaved Africans represented 2/3 of a plantation family's total wealth, with half of the remainder in the land they worked. Okay, a plantation family depended on the very labor of the enslaved Africans for its total income, protection, and survival. All right, this is deep. Now, the other thing that we have to understand is there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1865, so from 1619 up until 1865. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that we had, because we were the shipbuilders, we were the engineers, we were the basket makers, the furniture makers, the barrel makers, you know, blacksmiths, hemp baggers. We tended to the animals. We were the agriculturalists. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. All right. And then, and these skills, trades, and crafts are going to be used to build this country. But after slavery ends, guess what happens? Now you have these major labor unions created, like the National Labor Union created in 1866. Slavery ends in 1865. And these labor unions are largely going to lock African Americans out of these jobs we have been doing for free for 246 years. Now that we're free and we can compete for wages, now they create these labor unions, and they have contracts with various industries that say you can only hire white men that belong to these unions, but they're going to allow European peasants coming to this country, European immigrants coming to this country. They'll allow them to join the unions, okay? But we're going to be locked out of them, all right? 1619 to 1865, not 1690. 1619 to 1865, all right? Thanks, Dupree. Okay, so, and also, if you like this type of information we share with you, share at the African History Network. If you want to donate to the African History Network, you can do that as well. That helps support us. Also, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me, the AHN show. And this also helps when I have to travel to different events like this weekend at the Black Homeschooling Conference, because I have to pay for all that also. That helps with that as well. PayPal.me/the AHN show. So if you want to donate $5, $10, $25, $50, $100, that helps us. And if you want to set it up for a recurring donation on the same date each month, you can do that as well if you like. That helps support us also. That helps us stay on the air, keep broadcasting, keep doing the research, pay the bills, etc. Okay, so this is a powerful book right here. All right, now let me show you this quickly here. What do we have to do? We have to do, okay. I'm going to show you this slide, this PowerPoint slide here. And in the online course, we have a PowerPoint we do a PowerPoint presentation also. It's very visual. So let me pull this up here and share screen. Okay, here we go. All right, still trying to get used to Zoom. Okay, so there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that we had in this country up until 1619 to 1865. And that information is at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African History, but it comes from the book called The Other Slaves, Artisans and Craftsmen, okay, by James Newton and Ronald Lewis. Came out in 1978, all right? And at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, when you go through the main exhibit, they have this before slavery, and they have a replica of a slave ship. And then you come out on the other side, and they talk about Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, things like this. They have this big display on the wall, and they list the different skills, trades, and crafts we had in this country from 1619 to 1865. We were anchor makers, artists, bakers, barrel makers, bartenders, basket makers, beer makers, blacksmiths, bricklayers, brick makers, cabinet makers, cigar makers, cooks, coppersmiths, decorative furnishers, fishermen, engineers, gardeners, hemp baggers, which is the fiber of the marijuana plant, because cannabis was a crop grown in the colonies, in the 13 colonies, and a lot of the colonies. Cannabis was a crop that was grown. And we know marijuana was legal in this country up until 1937, where Harry J. Anslinger, who was the first chairman of the National Narcotics Commission, when he lied in his testimony to Congress, okay, marijuana was legal in this country. But because Mexicans were using it, and because it was called cannabis originally, marijuana is a Spanish term. And you had Mexicans coming to this country in the early 1900s, and the hatred and bigotry towards them became associated with the word marijuana. So it was relabeled marijuana. And Harry J. Anslinger said basically there were rumors that white women craved black men sexually when they were high on marijuana. Okay, there were rumors about this. And he said that marijuana was used by jazz singers and Negroes and Filipinos and Mexicans, things like this. So this is why the marijuana tax was instituted in 1937, which basically made it illegal except for medicinal purposes. Read the article from timeline.com, timeline.com, how a racist hate monger masterminded America's war on drugs. This is not Richard Nixon. This is Harry J. Anslinger. Harry Anslinger conflated drug use, race, and music to criminalize non-whiteness and create a prison industrial complex. This is from timeline.com, February 28th, 2018. How a racist hate monger masterminded America's war on drugs. You got to understand, see, as long as white people were using marijuana, it was fine. As long as white people were using cannabis, it was okay, not a problem. Same thing with heroin or opium. See, when Chinese start using opium, now it's a problem. See, the first anti-drug law was in 1875, the Anti-Opium Act, coming out of California because the Chinese were using opium. And what are these Chinese men going to do when they're high on opium? Are they going to try to rape white women? This is why it was made illegal. As long as white women were using opium, as long as white people were using opium, it's no problem. Okay. All right. So herb doctors, horse trainers, hunters, locksmiths. Okay. This is some real history here. All right. So some of the things we deal with in the online course, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with, 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, the teachings they take in from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, and we see reflected in the layout of Washington, D.C., because the layout of Washington, D.C. is based upon ancient African principles, and you see symbolism coming out of ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, because 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. And Freemasonry is based upon watered down teachings coming out of ancient Egypt, taken into Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who go into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD. And when we look at Freemasonry, we see that the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun. Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, and this symbolizes knowledge. The term child of light or sons and daughters of light was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of ancient Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the concept of you going to college, especially a liberal arts college, because the 7 liberal arts were taught in these temples, like rhetoric and arithmetic and things like this. George G.M. James talks about this in Stolen Legacy, and he talks about the trivium and the quadrivium, the 3 and the 4. Okay. So you get your credentials when you go to college in a series of steps or degrees. This is where this comes from. Okay. So we have to understand this history. Read Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. Tony's a friend of mine. Tony's a brilliant scholar. We're in the Black Friday documentaries together. Read pages 18 and 32, Egypt on the Potomac. All right. And 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. 13 of the 39 signers of the U.S. Constitution, signed September 17, 1787, were Freemasons. Okay, we talk about Osiris, Set, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus, and the cultural theft of Set, who Europeans call Isis, in the TV show The Secrets of Isis that came on Saturday mornings in the 1970s on CBS when they had the Shazam and Isis out. And we see symbols of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt represented in her costume. And when you watch the show, they talk about, and when the show comes on, the trailer, they talk about she gets her powers from ancient Egypt, and they talk about the daughters of Hathor, which is a deity, Heru, a deity coming out of, or Neteru, a Neter, or deity or goddess coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. And we see that, Set, who the Greeks call Isis, gave birth to the baby Heru on December 25th. It was a virgin birth, immaculate conception. We see the story of Osiris, Set, and Heru, the first Holy Trinity, goes back to at least 3300 BC in ancient Nubia, what the Greeks call Nubia, what we call Ta-Nehesi or Ta-Seti. And Nubia is the mother of ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt. And we see from Set and Heru, we get the Black Madonna and Child, which was worshipped all throughout Europe. Europeans worship the Black woman. All throughout Europe, Europeans worship the Black woman. Until the rise of white supremacy, late 1400s, early 1500s, then you have a rise in the phenotype of Europeans with the rise of white supremacy and Europeans conquering people's land and rebuilding their respective European countries. You have an ascendancy of white supremacy and ascendancy of the European phenotype. And a lot of these traditionally African images are going to be reinterpreted as European. So you have Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel using his relatives as images of God and Adam and Eve, things like this, right? So we deal with the ancient history. We deal with thousands of years of history because you have to understand the chronology of history. We deal with things chronologically. You can't start studying slavery in the 1440s with the Portuguese involvement, or in 1619, Jamestown, Virginia, things like this. No, you have to understand the chronology of history. So we deal with Christopher Columbus, because Columbus never came to this land we call the United States of America. Closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. So we deal with what was the transatlantic slave trade, what were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade starting, what role did Christopher Columbus play, because Columbus was essential, crucial to laying the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, the exploitation of indigenous people, because they're going to be plantations set up, especially sugarcane plantations set up in these areas that Columbus is conquering, like Haiti, or what they call Hispaniola, and Cuba, Jamaica, things like this, right? What were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade starting? What role did Christopher Columbus play? When did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? Because, we're taught about August 20th, 1619, Jamestown, Virginia. And even though that did happen, the Spanish were taking Africans into territory we call South Carolina in the 1520s. That's 100 years before Jamestown, Virginia. But this was our land stolen from us, African people. We've been here going back at least 51,700 years. That's the Khoisan, who come from Southern Africa, ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They have the oldest DNA on the planet. They go all around the world. And Dr. David Imhotep deals with this in his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. We deal with, did Africans sell themselves into slavery in that complicated history? Were African people in America before the slave trade? Because this was our land stolen before us. This is why when Europeans say, go back to Africa, I'm saying, wait a second, we were here before you came into existence. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Yes, we originally came from Africa, but it was much longer ago than we're taught. We do it the 800-year occupation of Europe by Africans known as the Moors, shocking archaeological discoveries that are causing experts to rethink everything. Because when these archaeological discoveries come out, like in Morocco, June or July 2017, they discovered skeletons of Homo sapiens, modern man, Homo sapiens, that date back 300,000, 350,000 years ago, which is 100,000 years older than the oldest human remains of modern man they have found in Ethiopia that date back 195,000 years ago. So when these discoveries take place, they keep having to back the dates up. Juvenile had a song called Back That Thing Up. They keep having to back the dates up. The deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets, the more research they do, the older we get. We deal with insurance companies that took out insurance policies, not just on slave ships, but enslaved Africans on the plantations. There were over 40 insurance companies, like the Nautilus Mutual Life Insurance Company. It starts in the spring of 1845 in Manhattan. And then they changed the name to the New York Life Insurance Company. They took out insurance policies on enslaved Africans the first 3 years they existed. About 508 insurance policies their first 3 years. We do a Freemasonry, America and the Founding Fathers, origins of the term America and Africa, because it's deeper than a lot of people think. The problem with slave movies, why are we bombarded with slave movies and a slave-themed TV show? I think it's designed to keep us in the slave mentality and also to really terrorize and traumatize African Americans as well. Asar Set Heru, we talked about the link to ancient Kemet, Egypt, and early Christianity. The fake Willie Lynch letter of 1712, because Willie Lynch never historically existed. Don't know why we keep talking about a Willie Lynch letter, Willie Lynch theory. Willie Lynch never historically existed. The letter's been proven to be a fraud. Their words in the Willie Lynch letter didn't even exist in the early 18th century, 1712. But Dr. David Imhotep, who's a friend of mine, he wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. He holds the world's first ever PhD in ancient African history. You can visit his website, historictruth.info, historictruth.info. He talks about a discovery made in Allendale County, South Carolina, in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. And they discovered artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeleton structures, and tools. 13 different disciplines fairly documenting an African presence in this country, going back at least 51,700 years ago. Yeah, Willie Lynch letter is a fraud. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Okay. When you research the letter, you find words like self-refueling, which is a 20th century term, comes from the transportation industry. There are words in the Willie Lynch letter that didn't exist. It was written by Dr. Kwabena Ashanti in 1970. Okay, he came out and admitted he wrote the Willie Lynch letter. There are words that didn't exist in the early 18th century, one. Two, the words that did exist but were used differently in the 18th century. You have to understand context of words. You have to understand sentence structure. That's something that was written in the mid to late 20th century, not the 18th century. So they're clues. When you understand history and word usage and periods of time, there are clues that tell you that wasn't even written in the early 18th century. It's a fraud. So this is an article from ScienceDaily.com, it's a scientific website, ScienceDaily.com. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. This came out 14 years ago, November 18, 2004. Here's their summary, what the article says. This deals with this is Dr. Albert Goodyear, who made the discovery in 2004, Allendale County, South Carolina. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. This is before Native Americans came into existence. Because when you read The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, he talks about, based upon the evidence, right? They deal with how the people who we call Native Americans are the offspring of an intermixing of Africans, like the Khoisan, who come here tens of thousands of years ago, and Asians who come here around 3000 BC, and they intermix, and the offspring are who we call Native Americans. These were usually dark-skinned people, not the light-skinned, almost white-looking Native Americans you see today. And many of those people are descendants of white people who had their names added to the Dawes Rolls, the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, named after Senator Henry L. Dawes, which was another land giveaway, 138 million acres of land. Okay, and most of that land was supposed to go to African Americans and Black Indians and Native Americans. 2/3 go to white people who paid $5 to have their names added to the Dawes Rolls, because to get your name added to the Dawes Rolls and get this allocation, these Black Indians and Native Americans, things like that, they had to anglicize their names. So this opened up a door for white people, name John Smith or whatever, to pay $5 to have their names added and get this free land. Okay, this is history. And this deals with why things are the way they are today. You have to understand the history. To understand to understand how to get out of a predicament, you have to understand the history of that problem. All right. And also what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself when you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. Okay. All right. So those of you that are African American business owners, be sure to tell us the name of your business. You can register. You can email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We have one more day of our special promotion: buy 1 month, get 1 month free of advertising with the African History Network. And we have 6 slots left because we put your commercial in the podcast, audio podcast of our radio show, the African History Network show, that I'm the host of. And that's my show. Been doing it 8 years. And if you don't have a commercial, we can record one for you, but we have six slots left. Okay, so we have 1 day left of this promotion: buy 1 month, get 1 month free. All right, so who do we have here? I have Dupree, Letitia says speak the truth. So how you all like this type of information? Okay, I'm going to screenshot, add to my notebook diary, said Dupree. We were always here and fully modernized, say Yvette Day. Yeah, now the transatlantic slave trade still happened. I ain't one of these people that go off the deep end and say the transatlantic slave trade never happened. That's a bunch of BS. Yes, it did. But you have to understand the chronology of history. You can't just look at the last 500 years of history. You have to look at the last 50,000. Okay? This is what I deal with in the online classes that I teach. You have to I don't just deal with the last 500 years of history. A lot of people just deal with African American history. No, you got to look at the last 50,000 years of history at least. Okay? And you have to understand the transatlantic slave trade. You have to understand the history of the Moors in Europe for 800 years. Okay, this is extremely important to understand this chronology of history. Okay, Willie Lynch's letter is a fraud, said Dupree. Yes, it is. Okay, Sonia, I thought he was about to talk about the black farmers. This is part 2. We talked about the black farmers in part 1. Our broadcast was interrupted. Zoom froze up on me, so I had to come back and continue. I talked about it at the beginning of the broadcast, but you got to go back and watch part 1 where I went deep into it. This is part 2. Matthew, okay, how you doing? Classes are good. The Moors and the Ma'afa. Yeah, ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, that's we have a bundle pack. Online courses, they don't sell $60 regularly, $130. There's 10 courses in the bundle pack. Okay, and we'll post a link here for you. All right. So we got Matthew, trying to get some of your comments. Glenda, good evening. How you doing, Glenda? Those in Atlanta, I'll be in Atlanta this weekend, July 13th through the 15th at the Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo. The Liberated Minds Black Homeschool and Education Expo is taking place at the Piedmont Technical Center. If you want to learn more about homeschooling children or just educating African-American children, especially from an African-centered perspective, you want to be here. LiberatedMindsExpo.com, LiberatedMindsExpo.com. This is the website. So I'm on a panel discussion on Friday and on Sunday. I'll be a vendor all 3 days. And Sunday, I do my presentation. I'm on a panel discussion Sunday, and I present on Sunday about 1 p.m. My presentation is on lessons from the film Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, lessons from the film Black Panther, economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, and how to Wakanda the vote. All right, so, and we had a presentation on DVD at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. All right. Okay. So let's get a couple more of your comments. I listen to that every day at work over and over. Matthew said, okay, dealing with online classes that I teach. All right, Dupree said, yes, and we don't go back far enough before these races existed. Yeah, the concept of race evolved over a 300-year period of time, 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries. Concept of race is relatively new. In ancient times, races did not exist. Okay, Bob Marley even knew with one love. Danielle said, man, I love being enlightened. All right. Okay, and then also, if you like this type of information, if you want to donate to the African History Network, that helps us out a lot as well. It helps us keep doing the research. If you like this type of information, it helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, pay the bills, etc. Okay, and I'll be broadcasting live. We're going to do some live broadcasts from the Black Homeschooling Conference. I'm going to do some interviews. Some I'll be able to broadcast live. Some will post later and air on my radio show also. The African History Network show on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation. We're on Sundays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for information how to listen to the show live and listen to the audio podcast, because we have over 800 audio podcasts at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay. So this Sunday, they'll rebroadcast last Sunday's show because I'll be in Atlanta, but we'll be back on live the following Sunday, right? Let's see, we also have a 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack of 6 of my DVD presentations, and includes 3 of my lectures dealing with the film Black Panther, and then also 3 other lectures also. It's regularly $75 on sale, $45 to the AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That's a 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack, okay? Are you a student or have studied under Ishaka Musa Barashango? Now, I'm not a student of Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, but I did read his books, African People, European Holidays, and Mental Genocide, book 1 and book 2, and I've watched some of his lectures because Minister Malik Shabazz here in Detroit was a student of his, and he would bring him in to do lectures. So I got some DVD lectures of Dr. Shaka Musa Barashango from Minister Malik Shabazz here in Detroit. So I did not know him personally. I never met him. I did not study under him, but I have studied his work. Okay, Dr. Shaka Musa Barashango wrote African People and European Holidays, a Mental Genocide, book 1 and book 2. All right. Larry's in Arkansas. Okay, guys, look, we got to get out of here. African-American business owners, I didn't see you all post the name of your businesses, anything like that. I was going to shout out your businesses. I ain't see that. Any Black business owners here? And be sure to email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll send you information about advertising with the African History Network. Customer service at africanhistorynetwork.com. We can get you started right away, actually. We also put your flyer or your graphic in our email newsletter that we send out 3 to 4 times a week. We have a database of 23,000 people, 23,000 subscribers to our email newsletter. Dupree said, I'm just a researcher. I hear people on the internet go back and read the books they give out. Okay. Also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have a recommended reading list of about 60 books there. So a lot of people ask, well, what books should I read? Where should I start? So we don't sell books, but I put together a recommended reading list of books to help people as well. Okay. So AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, at top of the page, click on the menu, click on book list. Natasha said, I love listening to you. All right, thanks, Natasha. Thank you for the clarity on these thieving neighbors, said Dupree. All right. Natasha, have you registered for the online courses I teach? Or Natisha, is it Natisha? Natasha. Okay, Donald said, great deal. I just purchased 6 acres. Good job. We'll continue to watch. AAC Enterprise, LLC, a 2.3 million commercial construction firms at $2.3 million construction firm. It's tough, but I'm a true student under you as well. All right, good. Purchase 6 acres of land. We need to purchase land. Land is the foundation for freedom. So we were free. We were set free from slavery, right? But we were in land is the foundation for independence. And a people can't be truly free without ownership of land. Okay, it's not just money. You need ownership of land. Where are you going to grow food? The foundation of freedom is food, clothing, shelter, and safety. If you're relying upon other people to provide food for you, even though you have money to buy the food, what happens when they don't want to sell you any more food? You gotta ownership of land is at the foundation. And this is what was understood after slavery ended. And they're giving away millions of acres of land to white people. Okay? That period of time called Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, is extremely crucial because that set the trajectory of where we are today. And us being largely locked out of that. Now you're going to have General Order Number 3 issued January 1865, what we call 40 acres and a mule. But this gave away 400,000 acres of land in coastal area in South Carolina and Georgia. It did not apply to all of the South. It was South Carolina and Georgia. You have about 40,000 former slaves that are going to take advantage of this. But most of that land is going to be taken back by President Andrew Johnson, who was a white supremacist and who was a sympathizer of the plantation owners, okay, who lost their land. The majority of their land is going to be given back to them, the plantation owners. And then, we're going to have the sharecropping system, and we're going to be required to have labor contracts. They're going to tie us back to a lot of these plantations that we were freed from. And we get locked into the sharecropping system. So even in spite of that, you can have African Americans, in spite of all that, who are able to save some money and to buy some land. And we're going to lose the majority of that. Okay, so this history is important. So when we deal with pushing political agendas, you got to have remedies for this maldistribution of land, this theft of land. And jobs is not a remedy for that. Yes, employment is important, but you can't come to African Americans and say, we're going to get you some jobs. You get the hell out of here with that. I'm sorry. Yes, employment is important, but that is not, that jobs do not compensate for the theft of land. Okay, you can't, no. No. All right. How to register for your class. Okay, Brandy asks how to register. Okay, we'll post a link again here. One, you can go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or we'll post a link here. It says register here for online courses. And this is the link for the bundle pack. It's on sale right now, $60, regularly $130. This is a steal. I don't know how much longer because we give up a lot, and I got to pay for the platform that is on Learn World. Hell, I just paid Learn World a couple of days ago. So there's a 10-course bundle pack. It includes Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It includes African-American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. And understand the transatlantic slave trade, that is a 14-hour, 7-session course that I did. These are all on demand. Watch at your own pace. This includes how Richard Nixon's war on drugs was a war on the African-American community, great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. There's some other ones also in there, okay? So we posted the link. Let me know that you got it. Let me know that you got the link. And you can also go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? And in the description of this broadcast, we have the link there also, okay? All right, let's see here. But people ask, why is this history so important? Now, they don't ask other ethnic groups, why is their history so important? But see, your history and culture gives you, like I said, it gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. It influences your economic empowerment, influences your political empowerment, all right? Every ethnic group in America understands that they have to become the #1 employers of their own people. Their history and culture teaches them that the only way that they're going to survive is through economic empowerment. They leverage their economics to deal with their politics and to control their politics. So it's contrary to popular belief. Other ethnic groups do vote. Even the Koch brothers vote. They just use their money to influence politics. Okay, Asians vote, Hispanics vote, other ethnic groups vote, but they leverage their economics to enforce and to control their politics. So when Dr. Leonard Jeffries was one of my teachers, when Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, when they teach, and Professor James Small is one of my teachers also, they talk about the pyramid principle, and I deal with this also in some of my presentations. So this is the pyramid of Khafre at Giza, pyramid of the Nesubiti or Pharaoh Khafre at Giza. Pyramid has 3 sides. The foundation is African history and culture. This gives you your values, your interests, and your principles. This creates a cultural paradigm that you see reality through. Your history and culture influences your economic empowerment, influences your economics, okay? This tells you that what type of businesses to have, and it teaches you that you have to control the economics of your community. You have to own the land in your community, own the gas stations and grocery stores, the businesses, the newspapers, own the media, the TV stations, the newspapers, control the educational system in your community, okay? Control the media, etc. And you use your economics influences your politics. That influences that the economic empowerment controls your political empowerment. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics goes way beyond voting. Voting is important, okay? And the people that tell you voting is not important, they're probably involved in suppressing your vote, or they're being paid to tell you don't vote. Because if your vote didn't matter, then why are Republicans involved in voter suppression tactics? 2016 election cycle, 14 new states have voter ID laws. These are states that had Republican-dominated state legislatures. If your vote didn't matter, why did Republicans engage in unprecedented voter suppression in the 2016 election cycle? Republicans feared our vote more than we valued our vote. We still don't understand this. We still don't understand what happened in 2016, the rampant voter suppression, because Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that we still don't understand was gutted with the 2013 Supreme Court case of Shelby County versus Holder, where Shelby County sued Attorney General Eric Holder. We still don't understand this. And you had 16.4 million African Americans registered to vote in 2016. Only 59% voted, which was a 7 percentage point drop of 66% of African Americans registered to vote, voting in the 2012 election cycle when President Obama was on the ballot. Part of that had to do with voter apathy. Part of that had to do with voter suppression. We still don't get it. And Donald Trump won the 3 battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by 78,000 votes, and only 59% of the 16.4 million African Americans registered to vote voted. If your vote didn't matter, why did Republicans engage in unprecedented voter suppression, violations of the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which was an anti-intimidation law? Why were there 868 fewer polling places in the 2016 election cycle? The Nation.com has an article dealing with 868 fewer polling places in 2016 election cycle. Why did that take place? We still don't understand what happened. So this is the pyramid principle. We have to have a synthesis of the African history and culture, economic empowerment, political empowerment. Unfortunately, see, my degree is in business administration with a major in marketing. I've taught entrepreneurship for a number of years, managed a business consulting company for 7 years. I understand this very well. I've been studying African history and culture for 26 years, but I understand the need for a synthesis of it. Dr. Leonard Jeffries, one of my teachers, he said we have to have a synthesis of the history and culture, economic empowerment, political empowerment. We just can't have the history and culture and speak metal netter and don't control our economics and don't want to deal with, economics because we say, oh, that's capitalism. No. You have to have a synthesis of all of this. Okay, see, if you could, what good is speaking, what good is reading metal netter and you can't read the handwriting on the wall? You don't understand politics. You can't control the politics in your community. Metal netter is important. But what made ancient Kemet so great is they had control of their natural resources. They had a political structure. They had their history, culture in place, and they had an army to protect what they had. They had a synthesis. When you study the great African nations that we talk about every Black History Month, African American History Month, we talk about Ghana, Songhai, and Mali. We talk about Nubia, all this stuff. They had their history and culture intact, which gave them their foundation. They controlled their resources. They controlled their economics. They controlled resources. They had trade with other nations usually. Oftentimes, these African nations, they had an African marketplace, okay? They had a political structure. I know a lot of us like to call each other kings and queens, but I haven't found a nation yet where they had more than one king or queen at a time. I can't, if you know of an African nation where there was more than one king or queen at a time when there's Subiti, let me know. There may be one, you may find one at one point in time. I know we like to call each other kings and queens, and that's better than calling each other the N-word. But when you study African nations, they didn't have more than one king or queen or oba at a time. But when you study Ghana has salt mines and gold mines. You study Mali, you study Songhai, things like this. They had their history and culture intact largely, their spiritual systems, even after Islam is imposed upon them. Still, they have an African cultural basis. They have control of resources. Okay, they have control of their natural resources. They can grow their own food. They own land. They can grow their own food. They have an economy, and they have a political structure as well. There's a political structure. There's politics involved. So how is it today many of our quote unquote conscious people just want to deal with the foundation level of history and culture, but don't want to deal with economics and politics. And that's what made these African nations that they keep talking about so great. It wasn't just the history and culture. It wasn't just the spiritual systems. It wasn't just the celebrations they had. They had a synthesis of the history and culture, the economics, and the politics. This is what many of us are missing. Okay? We just want to deal with the history and culture, while other people control the economics in your community. And and you got the political power to vote people out of office and don't do it. You get you got the power to vote people out of office, right? City council, mayor that are mistreating you and don't do it. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. You keep calling yourself an N-word, you're gonna think and act like one. You may even respond when people call you one. So when we look at the film Black Panther, and you see Black Panther, sure, this is one of the most powerful movies that have come out probably in the last 20 years. If you understand African history and culture and spiritual systems, and you understand the Black Panther comic book, the history of the comic book, you understand African language. And I'm doing a presentation then with the film Black Panther at the Liberating Minds Black Homeschooling Education Expo this weekend, July 13th through the 15th. And my presentation is on lessons from the film Black Panther. What can we take from the film and actually use? Lessons from the film Black Panther: economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, and how to Wakanda to vote. So we see that the character of the Black Panther, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, is first introduced in Volume 1, Issue 52 of the Fantastic Four, July 1966. Now, this is before the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense is created, October 16th, 1966, by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. So this wasn't copying off of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, no. But in this first issue, right, the Black Panther defeats the Fantastic Four in their own comic book. We've never seen anything like this before. The Black T'Chaka, he defeats the Fantastic Four in their own comic book. Okay, so you have him. So when we see the film Black Panther, we see the wealth, and we see Wakanda, the fictitious African nation of Wakanda, and we see they have their history and culture and all this stuff intact. And there are 18 different African tribes that make up Wakanda. So T'Chaka is the king of all of Wakanda. He's the chieftain of the Panther cult. And their deity is Bast, which comes from Bastet. Bastet was a deity, a goddess, a neter coming out of ancient Kemet, who was depicted with it was a female body who had the head of a black cat. But because a lot of this stuff goes back to ancient Kemet. But when we see Wakanda, in Wakanda, we see they control their economics. They have a political structure, a political system. They control their natural resources. Wakanda is the most technologically advanced nation on earth because their history was not interrupted by slavery and colonialism. So it gives us an idea of what Africa could look like if our history had not been interrupted by slavery and colonialism. So in Wakanda, they have their history and culture intact, spiritual systems, African spiritual systems. They control their natural resources. They own land. They have vibranium. They control their natural resources. They grow their own food. They control their economics, and they control their politics. We see it right in front of us. Okay. All right. So we have the my bundle pack of some DVD lectures. I have 40 of my presentations on DVD. I got some more stuff I recorded, but I haven't had a chance to put on DVD yet. But we have the 6 DVD Black Panther bundle pack. And that bundle pack is $45, regularly $75. Okay. It's available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll post the link here again also for that. Mimi said, I never answered to the N-word. My eldest son, while having the right of way riding his bike, was yelled at by a white man driving a rusty red truck. Call him an N-word, told him get out the way. Yeah, and see, we're the only people who put racial slurs derogatory to us in our own music and have a proliferation of it. We're the only people who do that largely, and we're the only people who would tolerate something like that. Because the only people who don't understand their history and culture would allow their music to dehumanize them like that. We're the only people who would tolerate something like that. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. All right. So we'll post this link here for the bundle pack. All right. And then also remember, Return of the Gods is coming up August 10th through the 12th in San Diego. I'll be at Return of the Gods in San Diego. We'll post a link for that as well. You can also visit returnofthegods.ent. Okay. We also have it available at our website. We have the information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. It's right on the homepage, dealing with Return of the Gods. I'll be speaking there. I'm being honored this year, and Professor Kaba Kamene will be there as well. From the Hidden Colors documentaries. It's hosted by Lord Jamar and Raw Digger. Also, Soleil will be there. Soleil, the singer, who was on JT Money's song. There was JT Money's song back in the day. Soleil. All right, so look, we got to get out of here. Hey, remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. I'll talk to you next time. Peace.